Sorry. I wish, cut the music. I wish I was in a better mood today. I do. I really, truly do. But this is like the worst day of the week for me. Tuesdays, Tuesdays, I could do without them. Give me those Mondays. Tuesday, it's just so far away. My name is Matthew Leffler. I am the armchair attorney, a real life lawyer and law professor, adjunct law professor at Michigan State University College of Law. I'm so grateful for able to have you visit me today in my office. I'm excited. I have a great conversation lined up for you. And initially, it was set to be on a Monday, but time, holidays, like so many things, get in the way of the stuff that's truly important. Today, I have an amazing guest for you all, for us to have our conversation, fleeting though it may be, with Jordan Hribar. He's a great guy. Hribar. I got it. I can do this. The EVP at ARL Network. We're going to talk all about ARL Network and Jordan's journey in the supply chain, but Monday has never been more far away than it is in this right moment. Monday only comes once a week. And for me, if I could have a wish, it would be 5 Mondays a week. That's the title of today's podcast. Before we get to my good friend Jordan, we're going to be taking a brief segue into the folks that help make this all possible. Our sponsors, our advertisers, and I hope you can support them. They have been so instrumental in supporting me and us as we continue to make this amazing content that people keep clamoring for. Of course, we have our friends over at DAT, Dial a Truck since 1978. DAT Truck, DAT Tech, DAT Software has been helping truckers and brokers discover more loads. That's actually where I met Jordan in person. We were at an executive symposium for DAT in Scottsdale, Arizona. Beautiful place, beautiful time of year. And I'm happy to have them as a sponsor. If you're new to DAT, and I'd be very surprised if you were, but if you are new or thinking about starting your own business and you need DAT, there's a link in the show notes of this podcast, which is available on Apple and Spotify. If you follow that link, you can save yourself 10% off of DAT for the first 12 months. That's wonderful. That's savings right back into your pocket. And of course, our other sponsor, Genlogs, Ryan Joyce and his incredible company setting a new standard of care for freight intelligence. Cameras, lights, cameras, action. This connected supply chain needs connected devices. And Genlogs has one of the largest and most robust networks of cameras across this country, monitoring thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of commercial vehicles every single day, helping you find out that one question you keep asking yourself. Where's my truck? Where's my trailer? Where's my freight? Who's coming and where are they going? Genlogs probably knows. Book your demo of Genlogs today. Follow the link in the show notes. Just go to Genlogs, I think .io. It's in the show notes. Check it out. And that is the beginning pieces. I will see many of you in the upcoming weeks. I will be at IANA. We had Ann Rinke, the president and CEO of IANA, with us last week. A few things have happened since then. Apparently, the IEEPA tariffs we've been talking about for a minute are still around-ish through October-ish, unless the Supreme Court grants certiorari. Fun word to say, certiorari. The Supreme Court grants less than 1% of petitions for certiorari, which means this case may not get brought up into cert, but I suspect that it probably will, and we'll have some better visibility in all of that. Now, without further ado, one of the things that I admire deeply about my friend Jordan is his admiration for my favorite day of the week. I think it might be also his favorite day of the week, but don't take my word for it. Please welcome my good friend, Jordan Hribar. Jordan.
Hey,
how are you?
What's going on?
I'm so happy to see you. How are you dealing with the problem of today? How are you managing?
I gotta be honest, up until you started going off about it being Tuesday, I was actually thinking it was Monday. And now, as I was leading into this, trying to bring some energy, because I know you got a lot of energy, I felt a little bit sad. But I got over it real quick and then realized it's also a day one, and we got day one hustle here every day.
There
So
you
for
go.
me, I would like to propose that you change this title of this episode, though, to 7 Mondays a week, if possible.
All
8,
right. So,
if you're willing to negotiate.
all right. I will, when this drops onto Apple and Spotify, the title will be 7 Mondays a week. That's an easy lift that I can do. I'll talk with the folks in the back. We'll make sure we can get that. But I think for you, Jordan, we can make this happen. But let me stop for a second. I haven't formally introduced you. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Jordan Reber, Executive Vice President at ARL. So I oversee all of our operations. I started on the brokerage end. Most of my background was on truckload brokerage. 10 years ago, I joined ARL, which is predominantly an asset-based drayage carrier owned by Ron Faraday and our friends at US One Industries, a big brand here in the drayage space. So we've taken really our combined experiences in our network to what we like to say expand the network to offer from asset-based drayage through to our truckload brokerage and LTL.
So you began in the industry in the brokerage space. Where'd you start in the business? Were you like a carrier sales guy? Were you shipper facing? What is that like when you join this industry?
So we're going to go all the way back to 2005 when I was coming out of school. I had no idea what I wanted to do and got in the management training program at PGT Trucking, based I was at the time Monaca, PA, just north of Pittsburgh, flatbed carrier. At the time, they also had a logistics arm. It was called Pittsburgh Logistics, which did fully managed outsourced contract solutions for big steel companies, whereas they would come in and just take over the entire traffic department, put a TMS system in place. And then they had the idea to say, well, a lot of these companies don't want to be fully outsourced. What if we just had a brokerage that could just get any of their freight? And they tapped my boss at the time and myself on the shoulder at 22 years old and said, hey, would you go do this? Like, I don't even know what that means, but okay, let's give it a shot, And it kind of started throughout my career. I've always just been, hey, you want me to do something? Sure, I'll try it, and let me just go screw up a bunch of times. And,
Did you have family in the business of supply chain, or you? Oh, so you just come in with like no preconceived notions of this industry?
No, man, you remember. So back then, it was just you got to get a college degree to get an interview. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do that as fast as possible. So I got business management, and then it was just like, all right, where do I get experience? And then I found this opportunity. Their management training program was cool because you spent 2 weeks in every department for a total of 6 months. And at the end of that, you would pick 2 or 3 departments you really liked, and then they would place you. And I actually got plucked out a little bit early because they wanted me in operations. And for me, I learned really fast that I'm not good in an office environment, and I need that fast pace. I came from restaurants before that when I was in college, and when I got in,
let's go back to the
operations and dispatchers are yelling at each other, people are MFing each other and throwing stuff. I was like, okay, yeah, this is probably where I should be at.
Did you wait tables? Is that what you did?
No, I started I bussed tables and a dishwasher and worked my way up to be a cook. I was a line cook.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that is real operations. Like, cause I think of the server, they're like the sales folks or the inside outside sales, but the cook and the expo, that's where the real magic happens.
I mean, that's where I got really good at prioritizing things and multitasking. So once I got into a seat that allowed me to do that, I think that a lot of that translated over to eventually when I was in brokerage. And I always use this analogy. I still use the cleaning the restaurant analogy because it was like you throughout the day, you're going to be reprioritizing things. And at the end of the day, we always did a cleanup so that you're setting yourself up for the next day. So at the end of my day, every day I would be cleaning up my emails, cleaning up. We printed a bunch of stuff back then. So cleaning all that stuff up. So then I walked in the morning, I was coming into a clean desk, like a clean restaurant, and I was ready to go for the day. And I always taught that to trainees along the way.
I think that's a great analogy because at the end of the, like when you're in the mix of it, like you want to set yourself up for the next day as best you can. And coming into a clean workspace is one of the best ways to be mentally on point because we love to be distracted. Oh, I can't work until I get this done or this out of the way, and then I can start working. When you were in the thick of it with the restaurant, did you like the servers? Were you friends with the servers? Or were those like people you had to deal with on top of the other customers?
Well, I think you learned that you didn't want a lot of conflict, and they could cause conflict. So you were trying to manipulate that through, and then communication was huge because they're coming back. They're getting feedback from the customer, and they got to deal with that. So I think you would think that, okay, how can I help you to get through this? But then at some points too, they would just be unreasonable, and it's like, okay, well, I can penalize you for that too. So, like,
See, I think we'd have a lot of fun because I was a server. I couldn't do what you do. I didn't like the heat. I didn't like the pressure. I like to perform. So I think that was it's a really good analogy. So you get into the world of transportation. At what point did you kind of realize that there was no way to get out of it?
I think it wasn't even that. I just kind of fell in love with it because I love that the relationship side of it. I love that just talking to people, dealing with issues, multitasking. My day would go so fast, and as we got more accessible to our work, I think I had a BlackBerry was the first thing with the little rolly ball thing on it.
That's right.
And I was able to like service my customers outside of that. And I remember having friends in my 20s with the bar and like, what are you doing working? Like, it's like, well, I can make more money this way. And like, I worked really hard to get these customers. Why would I not do that? Like, I don't understand why you guys aren't trying to work and do more. And so it just got to the point where, it's not about work-life balance. It just like kind of fit into my life. And, I enjoyed it. I like just to be on all the time.
It's one of the things where I say this tongue in cheek sometimes, but I think some folks in the supply chain kind of get this. And I think it resonates with you as well. Is if you do what you love, you're not really working. And like, I find so much passion in learning about the industry, talking to my customers, talking to industry experts to understand like where things are going and then just solving that problem. There's nothing better in my mind than solving a problem, saying, that is now done. I can go to the next thing. But I love that. Give me a good problem. I'm happy to dive in.
Yeah, and I think too, this industry has offered me a ton of opportunities. And if it wasn't for those, I would have got bored. Like I love that every day was different sitting at the desk, but at the same time, it was like I wanted different problems to solve. So as opportunities would come up, I wanted that. And then eventually I wanted to get out of the office, meet other people outside of our four walls. And I think, as you know, as you go out to these different shows, so easy to make new contacts, so easy to network. For the most part, everyone's very supportive. We collaborate with competitors all the time because a lot of us you're working with the same vendors and you want to know, hey, what's working, what's not working, how do we do these things better? So I think in general, it's just because of we were to extend the network out and meet all these different people, how you and I met originally, that keeps it interesting for me now.
I couldn't agree with you more. So my father was a roadway guy back in the 70s. And so he spent all of his time in some form or fashion in transportation. And I didn't really get to know him until I got a chance to work with him at a company he started back in the 90s. And we worked together from like 2012 until 2018. And you get to see the perspective of your competitors teach you a lot about your customers, and your competitors can teach you a lot about just the way the market moves generally. And I do think that this industry, massive though it is still incredibly small. So people really do get to know each other, and your reputation just precedes you, and people will remember you forever just because of how insulated and kind of small it ultimately feels.
Yeah, and I think that's where Ron Faraday and I, Ron, the owner of ARL, really jive from the beginning because his reputation preceded himself, and like you couldn't find someone to say a bad word about him. And then I would hear these stories since I've been here about just times that where he kind of got screwed in a deal, and then took the financial burden of that, but like stuck to his morals and just knew long term, like this is what I want to be known as. And then over the years, I've also watched we don't have an agent recruiter, and like we just have agents that are either calling Ron directly or someone's calling Ron to call this guy because it's just his brand and his reputation is why they hey, when you want to go to a place that's just going to treat you right, that ARL is where you go.
How did you first find out about ARL? How did that conversation, that transition go?
Yeah, I got stumbled into. I mean, there's a headhunter reached out to me, and at the time I told him, I was like, look, I really couldn't move on from the opportunity I was in at that moment. He just said, hey, guy's local. He's in Pittsburgh. I'll meet you on the weekend. I'll just, at the very least, for networking, go ahead. And so that's originally how we did it. And then like 3 Sundays later, as we were just talking about everything, solving all the world's problems. We decided, hey, let me go learn something about drayage for a while to kind of expand what I do before we, started to diversify the company.
So drayage, and I'm not an expert, so make sure to fill in the gaps that I kind of outlined this. So in the world of drayage, I understand it. There are boxes that are showing up on trains, or maybe they're showing up at ports. And then there's someone who's going to pick up that box, probably with some sort of a chassis, maybe a 20-foot or 40-foot or 53-foot or triax or some fancy chassis. And then they're moving that where? Like what is the world of a dray operator look like day to day?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. So you're obviously an expert. No, I mean, you're going to if it's an import, it's going to go to a consignee. You know, if it's an export, you're picking up from a shipper. But ultimately, these are intermodal moves where if it's a 20 or 40-foot coming into the port, you know, say it starts overseas, comes on the ship, clears at the port, we pick up the loaded, and then we're taking it to the final destination. You know, so we're just one small portion of this massive move. You know, so for us, a lot of times our customers are actually freight forwarders or some version of an intermediary. We're rarely, in this case, dealing with the BCO direct because the BCO is dealing with someone that can do all of it, and we're just doing a small portion of it.
I see.
Same in the 53-foot domestic world. Now you're dealing with the rails, but they're the IMCs of the world that are out there that are working these large contracts, high volume. With the different BCOs. And then for example, if it's going into Jacksonville, Florida, where we're at, we can work with multiple IMCs. It doesn't matter to us. We're just taking the box to whatever customer they tell us to take it to.
How did ARL get into the world of dray to begin with? So to dominate that field, it's a very competitive industry. How did ARL find itself in that niche?
Well, RJ Faraday, Ron's dad, started the company in the late 70s, and we're based in Pittsburgh, but he was into the agent-based model. So to start, it was all flatbed. And then somewhere in the 90s, he got started understanding drayage and saw how fragmented it was. But he'll also tell you, like, there used to be just different like truck stops or just office space areas where you could go and just one by one, you'd have agents from all these different intermodal companies. He's like, it was great. I could go on one sales call and just hit like 5 or 6 people. And he was the consummate salesman. So like for him, he was like, I think it was just an efficiency thing. He saw that opportunity and started building relationships. And that's when it kind of took off. And then as Ron came into the business in 81, was learning from the ground up. And so he was able to get, work with all these relationships and evolve with them. And then his dad wanted to step away a little bit. Ron took it over, bought it off of him, and just continued to expand it. But what Ron saw was an opportunity to create more what he calls a single point of contact with a national account sales team. And he'll tell everyone is like, anyone can bill your customers, pay your drivers, and pay your commissions. Like, what else can we do for you in an agent-based model? Well, we can do national account sales where we can go to Chicago, and just spend an entire week there and talk to these big intermediaries about, not just one location. We can talk about all our locations at one time, but customers don't want to have to know, okay, who's your agent in New Jersey, who's your agent in Savannah, and who's your agent that does 53-foot domestics in Chicago. So we created the single point of contact team that says, filter that in through us. We'll get it out to the right agents, and then eventually match you up with them if there's going to be ongoing business.
I see. So it's like the idea being like a one hand to shake, one throat to choke. And as your agents are out there, you're bringing them revenue through operational sales. You're doing it at a national level, but then you're doing the back office support. So we're going to help you do this thing and that thing and provide you essentially like a business in a box. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, because it's our operating authority, so it's our safety department that's qualifying all the drivers. It's our ELDs, and it's us approving credit and billing the customers, and then we take on all the credit risk. But essentially, it really makes it so an agent can just focus on their drivers and their customers, and then we're out there on their behalf, understanding what they do really well, so we can bring them appropriate opportunities to enhance that. Because I think a lot of times they're not necessarily big enough to always have a business development arm within their terminal. So they're really good with their existing customers, but they don't have a lot of time to dedicate towards new business. So we try to infuse the new business in. But at the same time, like, hey, most likely for this account, you're not the only agent's going to work with them. So like, you do need to perform, and we want you to treat this customer like your customer. But if things start going sideways, like, we can't pull that business back because we can't jeopardize it for the rest. And so for most of our agents, they understand that. Plus, we've already pre-qualified or pre-screened them, realize they're good operators, and we want to support them so they can grow.
How many agents are out in the US right now? How many agents are out there helping you guys deliver that customer promise?
So we have 60 plus agent terminals across the country. About 2/3 of them are asset based, and then we have the brokerage agents as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So as we've been seeing in the news, intermodal train stuff, there's been a lot of stuff happening. And we saw Norfolk Southern make an offer, like the merger with UP. That's got regulatory approvals that have to go through. Then we saw what they don't say is a response, but kind of feels like a response, where BNSF says, hey, we're going to do a partnership with CSX. If these type of things happen, does that likely mean more business for your drayage providers? Or does that mean, how do you view something like that?
I think it's to be determined, but as you look for more, it could create new lanes through these efficiencies. Now, I think potentially when you look at like Memphis and Chicago, which historically is where a lot of these exchanges happen, maybe you don't have as much there if they get more efficient there through these deals. But I think as you start looking at, like, we're not on the West Coast. So for us, everything's on this half of the country for the most part. We're looking at new opportunities that come out from those. We might bring more volume in. And at the end of the day, intermodal has to be competitive with over the road.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Over the road rates have been down for so long. Once over the road rates start going back up, that typically means intermodals can be more competitive and they start picking up more volume. But with these efficiencies, maybe that will make it so they can, be more cost effective and open up some additional lanes that we don't have today. So I hope, always hope, I'm the hopeful optimist, everything.
Right.
But
probably like Mondays. Monday's all about hope for the week.
So much opportunity on a Monday. Yeah.
Well, okay. As you mentioned, you're not out west. Is there a reason why you're not out west? Are you starting to think about finding agents out west? How do you view westward expansion, manifest destiny, as it were?
Well, we did just open in Salt Lake City. So
okay.
like I said, that's a new one for us. We're excited about that opportunity. It's brand new though. And I think there's opportunities. Like look at Denver, look at Phoenix, I think we're targeting for the future. But California will not be typically one of those. And that's AB5, as I know you know very well.
That's right. Absolutely. Those are W-2 drivers.
Yes, they don't love owner operators out there. They don't love the freedom of choice for drivers to choose to be owner operators in California.
Yeah, it's interesting. So clearly, like, you have these plans for expansion, but not just like on the dray side we've kind of talked about, but you mentioned other areas that ARL Network has kind of grown into. Can you speak, like, what other places, like, are you getting into, or have you helped bring ARL Network along for the ride?
Yeah, so my background was in brokerage, truckload brokerage. So as we did build a company store brokerage here in Pittsburgh. So they're really the first, after my first year working with Ron on the drayage side and understanding that and adding that wrinkle to what we would do, we started to build out a truckload brokerage as well. And then, through that, building our tech stack. We partnered with TIE early on, back when TIE was called Technology, but they spelled it different. It was the only flaw, I think, on their product. I was like, you got to change that name. But they've been great partners ever since. And what really loved about them was their ability to integrate with just about anyone. They have a really clean, open API. So as we're out there networking and we're talking, to the trucker tools and to the green screens, of the world, we're trying to bring these things in and keep building out our tech stack. That's really gave us the ability to, not just through networking, we started bringing on agents. Once again, we don't have an agent recruiter, but these guys would reach out to us, or someone that knew us would send them our way, say, hey, this person wants to be an agent. And we would do the demo, just showing them, this is what we have for the company store. We can give it to an agent. And people were just floored by it. So we're like, well, all right, and start building up an agent program on the brokerage side as well.
For an agent on the broker side, like, are they existing brokers, like, have their own brokerage operations? They're like maybe great salespeople at a big broker. Like, who's the best kind of candidate that would be successful in the brokerage you kind of outlined here?
Yeah, you get a mixed bag of them. So you have some that may be agents somewhere else that aren't being supported, or they're having some issues with their current provider and they're looking for a new opportunity. You have other guys that are looking for a fresh start and want to start over again. The beautiful thing of that, there's no cost associated really with either side of the arrangement here. So if one person wanted to come in and just start cold calling again, hey, we'll just give you a login. There's minimal cost on our side, no cost on theirs, and get them off the ground and running. Unlike people that want to bring on a bunch of trucks, and now you got all this other.
I got 30 trucks and I got a bunch of trailers.
Yeah, there's a lot of complications in that world, and we got to qualify them a lot differently, qualify the drivers a lot differently. So I think it tends to be a mix, and they're always entrepreneurs. That's really what you're, and we're supporting entrepreneurs. So as we're talking to them, we're really just trying to make sure that they're a culture fit for us, that they're likable, they're hardworking. They do what they say they're going to do. They're not going to create any extra liabilities. Like, we don't need to grow just for the sake of growing. We're not just chasing revenue. We want the right people that we're going to have to work with them every single day. So I don't need someone that's unorganized, causing a bunch of problems. I don't need someone that's going to be calling our office and yelling at our people all the time. They're like, there's enough stress in the industry that's like, try to work on making this as stressless as possible.
Well, there's a level of patience in bringing new agents on and new people on. It's slow to find the right fit, and then quick to say, okay, this isn't working. Off you go, do something else. We wish you well. How many agents on the brokerage side do you have right now? So we had the 60 or so on the Dre side, or is that all in combined?
No, that was all in combined.
Okay.
So there's like 15 to 20 on the brokerage side of different sizes. Some with full offices, others are just sitting in their apartment, brokering freight.
Well, okay. So your background, you've been on the truckload brokerage side, you've done flatbed, you've done Dre. What's been your favorite for you? What do you love? What kind of trailing equipment is what you're all about?
Yeah, I mean, the flatbed got my heart early on, and it's still there. Although we don't do as much of it as we did back then, but we did a great job of diversifying, because I think we actually struggled back in the day of diversifying away from flatbed because we were just so into it. But I think it was interesting back then, because we were owned by a flatbed trucking company, that during our training for new hires, one of the days is we could send them over to PGT, and they actually got to get on a flatbed, got to secure a coil. They got to put a tarp. They had to fold up a tarp so that when our guys were negotiating and someone wanted an extra $50 because it was an 8-foot drop tarp, and they weren't going to sit there and say, oh, this is BS, this guy's nickel and diamond, or this driver's just lazy. It's like, no, they've already done it, and they realize how hard it is. And instead of hearing that, once they heard it from the customer, they're already saying it to the customer that we need these things. And when the customer would try to say, well, so-and-so is not charging me for that, I was like, okay, let's see who they have show up to pick up your load. And we would just, like, at one time, and I don't remember this anymore, but I did know how to secure a coil. I knew exactly where to move it to spread the weight on the axles. Like, I get down to that level of detail with a customer. And, this is 2008, 2009. Really our only competition that knew flatbed like we were was Access America. And we were kind of ahead of them a little bit. But, yeah, if I was going up against one of the other big well-known name brokers, it was like they're dry van and reefer. And they just couldn't compete.
They're full truckload. They don't know anything about the flooring and all that. So I learned about flatbeds in the maintenance world. So my world was usually construction and usually a home building. That's where I saw the most flatbed stuff. But that Apatong flooring, it's not the same as your normal oak flooring you have in a 53-foot van. It's a special floor designed for the unique application of flatbed. So as we look at what you're doing with ARL Network now, where is the future? Where do you see the company kind of pivoting or moving further? Obviously moving further west, filling in gaps as you go. But what are the areas that are still ripe for expansion?
I think there's always markets that we haven't been in. That would be the low hanging fruit right now. Like, I think about Kansas City has been discussed there. It's a market we've not touched yet. I always wanted to do, okay, with our current customer base, if I was to go to our single point of contact team and say, and we're doing it right now with Salt Lake City, just go to our current customers and let them know we're open in Salt Lake City, and start driving those opportunities in there. And so we don't really want to keep building in the spaces where we already have a lot of density, so Chicago, Newark, Savannah, Florida. We would rather support our existing agents that are already there and continue to expand those relationships. If we have another person come in, it just dilutes the water a little bit more. I mean, we definitely have competitors that'll have a bunch of agents in one location, and I'm not knocking that model, but it's just not what we want to do. We prefer to go after spaces we're not. But I think a lot of this will just happen organically. And a lot of my focus recently has been more so inward, and understanding that we make sure we have the proper structure within a ARL corporate, so that there's levels of accountability, so that when something breaks, I can look back and say, okay, is that process documented? Are we following it? And if we are, then okay, it failed somewhere and we know exactly where it failed. Let's put training at that level of the organization. And just making sure if we have the right people in the right seats, we should be executing at these levels. And I think before we grow again, I wanted to make sure we had that side of the house really buttoned up.
Well, let's focus inward then, 'cause I think that's a great transition. You and I jokingly or very seriously love a good Monday, but the last couple of years have been really tough in the transportation and logistics space. At least if you're looking like overall rates and what drivers and brokers are taking home at this moment. How do you keep a team motivated in an environment like this? What are your kind of your go-to strategies to get people engaged and excited when there's a lot that's going on that may not be great for the business generally?
Well, I think we have a saying around here: small wins every day. And we're looking for those small wins. And I guess, guys, you're never gonna have this big celebration moment when those happen. But when we stack those up over a long period of time and we look backwards at all the things we've accomplished, that's where we're gonna say, oh, look, wow, we are in a better spot. So we do, I do a quarterly speech for the entire company where I'm going over, here's the goals we set out for this year. Here's what we've accomplished. Here's the ones we haven't accomplished, but we need to, holding the executive level team accountable. I think that level of accountability goes both ways. And I tell our team, like, I want you to be bringing up issues within the organization, trying to solve them at the lower levels, but we do have a system in place to escalate them upward. So I think for, someone that's a direct contributor or a supervisor of a few direct contributors to like see these issues that they feel like I'm just going to deal with them. And just, this is part of my job. But now they've been empowered to say, no, this is an issue. I have some ideas. We brainstorm the ideas. If they can't figure it out, it gets escalated up. It could legitimately always get escalated up to us. And we owe it to them to come back with whatever response. And it can't be, oh, the executive team's very busy. We see them traveling around everywhere, so they cut us a break. I'm like, no, you come to me if you're not getting answers and say, like, I deserve an answer, because I agree, you deserve an answer.
This is something that you and I had talked about. And I wanted you to I want to pull this thread further and have you kind of explain to me and for the folks watching and listening, how you deal with escalation of issues for employees and workers. Because the thing that I find so fascinating is I fundamentally believe that if you want to win customers, you have to be the employer choice. Your people who work for you have to be there because they want to work with you. So
Yes.
kind of walk me through, like, I'm a individual contributor, low man on the totem pole. I have an issue. How would I anticipate those problems being addressed as it goes through the organization?
Well, as well, nerd out on a system called Traction, which is EOS. It's Entrepreneur Operating System. And if you tag them into any of this, you're going to get a bunch of other guys that once you get into this, you start drinking the Kool-Aid, you're in. But ultimately, what we have is what are called level 10 meetings at every level of the organization. And on Mondays is where we start with direct contributors, with supervisors, and then it works its way up. So on Fridays, Ron and myself are meeting with the vice presidents. And within that, we use a platform called Monday, which is a project management software. You can use it for we do use it for a lot of different things, but we built traction boards in there for the level 10 meetings. Whereas throughout the week, if you have an issue, you put it on the board. And then in the meetings, issues are being discussed. We call them, we IDS it. So it's an issue, identify it, discuss and solve the issue, and then assign it to somebody, which then becomes a to-do. And that to-do is then gets a date on it or when it needs to be due. And it should be 1 week or 2 weeks for the most part. But if you can't come up with your level, how to solve it, it'll go to stuck and gets moved up a level to the next board and to be discussed there. And then this could happen all the way through to it eventually make it to the executive level. Once we got a rhythm to this, though, what we found is most issues are getting solved either at this manager level or the director level. They don't even make it up to us. And a lot of things they used to push up to us, I'm like, why would you have the solution? It's just implement it now. But it also lives on those boards. So it just can't ever just go away. Cause I think we had a bad habit of, like, issues would come up. We discuss solutions. We think we have an idea. You go work on it, but then new issues come up and you never actually solve that and see it through. And this allows you to see it on the board. Like, hey, I get it. There's new issues on there, but we still haven't solved these other ones that are overdue. Like, we have to focus on those before we start working on them. And it's just that level of accountability which then leads into rocks, which are much bigger, things that we're working on as a company, and there's rules behind how many rocks you can necessarily have, because those should be your highest priority items before you get to your to-dos. And it's just accountability across the board from the bottom to the top.
Well, if you're a customer and you have an issue, you're going to talk to someone, and that'll be resolved as quickly as is practical for that customer. Because that's something we all think about: revenue facing, public facing. We got to solve it.
Yep.
But it's the blocking and tackling internally, having the right people to manage the customer or the relationship. And if those people are able to say in a candid way, "Hey, this is a problem I'm trying to solve," it gives you like this accountability, to your point, where people actually feel a sense of ownership in what they're doing. Like I know of companies that talk about things like this, but your I wouldn't say strict, but like your ability to continually make sure this is how it works. How long has the system been in place for you guys?
So we launched it April of last year to the employees, but technically we were working on about 6 months before that. There's a lot of legwork that went into it, down to like our core values. Like sometimes you see these core values for companies like, it's just marketing ploy. I'm like, no, we really thought those through. We had to go through an exercise where we thought about like our ideal employees that we currently have. And it's not like what we want us to be. It's like, what do we really love about those employees? And that's how we came up with those are. And then you start working through your VTO, which is your vision traction organizer, where you map out what's your big, hairy, audacious goal for 10 years out, bring that down to 3 years. And what does that necessarily look like at a high level? But now bring it down to 1 year. What do we need to accomplish in 1 year? And very specifically, what are those things, which in our quarterly meetings at the executive level, we talk about a lot of the bigger issues and then prioritize them. Because once again, you just can't, if everything's important, nothing's important. And so this is where we're identifying that. But then I have to broadcast it to the entire company. It has to be something you can put up on the bulletin board, and everyone's going to see that in 3 months, I'm going to report back whether we did these things or we didn't do these things and why.
And these goals are not necessarily financial goals. It's not like, oh, we need to have this amount of revenue, this amount of headcount, this amount of EBITDA. This is more cultural. How do you look at these goals?
Yeah, and then sometimes there's things we have to necessarily accomplish. Like we switched ELD providers this year. Well, first step one, the 1 quarter was assess, should we change? Because that's a big deal. We need to look at all these things. So a whole task force was created, but one person needed to head that up, and they were one person was going to be held accountable for that. Once we made the decision, move forward on that, naturally that was going to become a big rock for the next quarter, is to do this. So these are the things that aren't necessarily revenue generating, but very important towards our 3 and 10 year goal, where we want to be. Now, you definitely have KPIs on there, and scorecards are a big deal. And we don't hide from those either. Each one of those level 10 meetings, they have scorecards. And in every seat within the organization, which we don't have an organization chart, we have an accountability chart. There's the one key KPI for your seat that'll judge. That's how we're judging you. You should know that's how we're judging you. Now, below that, you're going to have other KPIs too that judge your success. But what is that one KPI for that seat that is driving the overall success of the organization? And everyone gets access to see that information as well.
That's fascinating. So you mentioned like the core values. What are the core values of the ARL network? I'd love to hear you kind of riff on these for a moment.
So everyone's our customer is a Ron. We call that a Ronism, because in Pittsburgh we have a lot of Mike Tomlinisms. But everyone's our customer was one that you always hear Ron say that. Say, we're never the customer. Our drivers are our customer, our agents are our customer, our customers are our customers. If you ever try to pick up a tab when Ron's at a dinner, he may cut you. Just so you know, like it doesn't matter if we are technically the customer, like, we're at the vendor, he has to pay. Like, I never want to be indebted to anybody. I was like, I don't think that's how it works, Ron, but okay.
That's incredible.
Own it is another one that comes back to accountability. Just when it comes down, if you're involved in a situation, whether that's your problem or not, own it. And make sure that we got solutions. And a lot of times too, I mean, people are bringing us a lot of their problems, and there's, comes the group emails, and it's just very easy to say, oh, that's so-and-so's job, and that's just not what we want within the organization. So everyone, that just someone has to come in and necessarily own it, and not just turn a blind eye to it. Passion for greatness is a great one, because for me, that really ties into small wins every day. And what I like to call it is really challenging status quo. Like, so whatever job you're doing, trying to think of how we could do it better, or what the organization can be doing better, and question everything about what we do. I used to interview like crazy. I don't do as much anymore, but when I did, I tell people, like, come in, learn our business, and then call our baby ugly. Like, pick it apart. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And if it hurts anyone else's feelings that's managing you, that's a them problem, not a you problem. Like, we need to be open to that constructive criticism. So that's, especially as we're looking now at automation and how AI is going to play in these things. I don't want employees that are afraid AI is going to take my job. I want them to embrace it, to enhance their job, and be the one that leads that charge, because you become extremely more valuable to me if you're the one implementing these things, as opposed to saying, I'm going to reject all this and I don't want to take my job. And then the last one is lunch pail mentality. So that comes back to the day one hustle, which I did wear for you with my shirt. And
that's right. Absolutely.
Trademark too, so you can't take it or do anything with it. Not that I'm
good for you for following the legal stuff. That's the thing people often forget, is like, you should trademark the things you find valuable.
Yeah, I got Day One Hustle trademark, the logos, and I tried to get the D1H as well, but like that was contested. I was like, well, I'm not going to fight for it. So. But Day One Hustle was something, it worked really well in brokerage. And that's been my mentality ever since, I got in this business. And kudos to Joe Giuliano, who worked with us for a while. Him and I grew up in the same neighborhood. He's actually a fellow lover of Mondays. So you two would get along really well. But it's really doesn't matter what your title is, what position, what you've accomplished. Like, we're coming in every day like it's our first day, and be humble, be willing to learn, be willing to make mistakes, and just come in and earn it every single day. And that's where, so we're like, well, the accounting department probably won't relate to that very well.
Sorry, I messed up on the numbers. This is my first day.
Yeah. So lunch bill mentality is kind of how we put that in there. So that's more of the blue collar steel work in town, or maybe Pittsburgh. Like, bring your lunch bill to work. We're here to work. We're here to, that's what we do. So when we look at right person for the company, we interview them based on those core values. And in your biannual reviews, which is called a people analyzer, you're judged on those 4 qualities. And it's going to say, do you do those most of the time? Do you do, for each one, do you do it most of the time? Do you do it sometimes? Or do you only do it most of the time? You not do it? Because, like, we're not going to say everyone has to do these things all the time, but you should be pushing to do it most of the time. And look, if you're in a role where you are a direct contributor and you're adding value to the company, but you don't want to really go beyond that seat, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You're probably not going to have passion for greatness, and you'll get scored neutral on that. But if you come to us and you're in that role and you say, I want to be more in this company, and I'll look at your people analyzer and say, well, why is your manager giving you neutral on passion for greatness? That's something we should work on, because I need that from my future leaders.
That's amazing. I am excited to kind of see how this kind of works its way through as we begin, to your point you mentioned a second ago, in the age of automation. So much of our business has been human driven. So much work is with actual people making phone calls, making pickups, making deliveries, taking pictures. As we start looking ahead to automation, how are you seeing that impact you now? And how would you think that's going to impact you in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, I think, so let me back up one step, because we've had employees down in Columbia for a long time with Lean Solutions Group. And my first year here, actually, when we were still doing paper logs, the ELD mandate hadn't gone through yet, there was a lot of minutia that went into moving a drayage shipment. And it just couldn't afford to build the company and grow the company while trying to have labor up here do that. So in Columbia, these were really good jobs and the people were talented. And we're like, all right, we're going to put anything we can build an SOP for that you just do it over and over again. We're going to do it in Columbia, because the people in Pittsburgh were telling us, we don't want to do that work anymore. Mm-hmm. It's mind-numbing work. Well, now we're looking at it and saying, okay, well, that's the sort of work that we need to automate. Yeah. Because whether it's through an RPA or some sort of AI, as we've been interviewing partners, to be honest, on that here as the past 6 months, is where are those processes that we can automate, and we're taking up small projects to do so. So we actually hired Adam Roddery as a VP of technology about 4 or 5 months ago. And that's really some of the stuff that he's working on. He's also an EDI expert. So he's working on our EDIs, which I don't know why at this point of our lives we're still doing EDI, but it's a necessary evil. So
we still use Excel for a lot of things too, Jordan. It's just
I know.
The nature of our business is slow.
So we're looking for the small wins there too. And I was like, let's find a couple processes that they're internal processes and not outward facing, so we can test this and see if it works. And if we break something, it's no big deal. We'll still do it manually alongside of it. And once we've tested it out, now it's like, okay, well, the person that does the manual process, we still need them. because we need them to manage this. It's just that they'll be able to handle more.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you bring up, is that what you can offshore can likely be automated, but the automation still requires some sort of human intervention. I think Lean's a great example. I'm not sure if they're associated or connected with CloneOps, which is another one of these virtual agent things.
Well, David Bell, who was one of the founders of Lean, is now off doing his own thing with CloneOps. Yeah,
I see. That makes sense. So it's this natural progression of technology. And I think for business leaders in the industry now, if you're not exploring these things like now, you'll be left behind. So where do you think this goes 5 years from now? Do you think we're going to have autonomous drayage companies like robotic trucks doing some of this work? Or do you think that remains a human activity?
That will remain a human activity because they're in highly congested areas doing complicated work. I mean, when you're seeing most of the autonomous vehicles come into play is your long haul shipments, or might be setting up more of a spoken hub where you're going from one area, but it's in very remote areas of the country that it can just drive for thousands of miles without seeing a human. Now, as those things break down, that's interesting because like today, if a truck breaks down, how does it going to go put its road flares out?
Yeah, exactly.
Not a person.
Maybe there'll be a drone that does that. That might be
there's legislation that has to be changed or modified to allow for some of these things because they would be in violation if not. But drayage is just it's a dirty world because you're just in these highly congested areas where there's a lot of vehicles, and I think you're going to need humans to continue to do that sort of work. But on the brokerage side, I mean, you're already seeing it. We've already have voice AI handling our inbound phone calls. I mean, that was the first thing. Once we taught a new broker and we put them on the floor, the first thing they did was take inbound phone calls, which just reading,
That's right. That's right.
And do an initial negotiation. You're not allowed to negotiate past that anyhow. So you can do that with a bot.
I'm sure the robots are going to come for the lawyers at some point, and probably the podcasters too. So I know
hours are going down, lawyers. It's just like
I'm one of the kind of lawyers that I don't want clients. I don't want to bill people. I want people to solve their own problem. Well, make contracts that don't require litigation. Make it really clean and clear. You don't have to worry about things going sideways.
That would be amazing. Yeah, well, I mean,
someday.
Unfortunately, being having a trucking company, there's accidents that happen, and plaintiff's attorney will come after us, and it's like, man, we could do everything perfect, follow by the book, follow our SOP all the way through, and it's just like the amount of stuff that they're going to go through when you're getting deposed. And I was just sitting there doing like deposition preps. I'm like, and I talked to our lawyer. I'm like, how do you do this every day? This is terrible.
That's something I got my start doing catastrophic trucking accidents. And to your point, like every trucking company or brokerage's worst day is when there's a catastrophic accident. And it just sucks if you're a lawyer, because that's your everyday. You must be paying careful attention to the broker liability cases. So you now have the 9th Circuit with the 6th Circuit versus the 11th Circuit and the 7th Circuit. So the first two think brokers can be held liable. The second two think brokers can't be held liable. How are you helping? How are you thinking about this? Do you hope the Supreme Court picks up one of these cases this year?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, we support the TIA too, and on their fly-ins. Unfortunately, I won't be at the fly-in in DC because I will be with you in IANA.
That's right.
This year. And it's the same exact time, unfortunately. But we want to go out there and support Ann and all their other draymen and chassis providers and customers. But no, I think they're giving a voice to that. And ultimately, like I personally don't believe a broker should have liability in that. That's the FMCSA's job, is to tell us if these guys are safe or not. And if they can't get around to putting scores on all these guys, or 93% of them, then like, what are we supposed to judge off of?
So, we should worry about the FMCSA when it comes to vetting motor carriers. That seems way too much up their wheelhouse. They probably should spend more time thinking about broker transparency. I think that's the best time for them to invest. Now, this is my first time going to an IANA Expo. I've been to other IANA events, but never the Expo. What should I be looking for as a first timer, Jordan?
Well, I think, it's the networking is always there. And I'll have to, now when you say that, we're having a happy hour. You will be invited to said happy hour. So you can meet a bunch of people there. But, for us, and like I said, we have customers that are there. So it's an opportunity. We'll have several of our agents that are coming in. So we're setting up a lot of meetings to talk about current business, new business, what's going on in the market. But, one of the things that, I briefly talked with Ann when she first got this job, she was like 2 weeks onto the job. So I think she was drinking from a fire hose. But I'm like, man, I've built a reputation on the brokerage side of, collaborating with competitors, collaborating with vendors to ultimately do what's best for the industry. And, now that I'm more hyper focused on everything within ARL, and we have a lot of exposure on the drayage side, is, where can we all be working together to make this more efficient and better for the driver? Because, there's a lot of chassis pools out there, and the equipment that's out there is not always great. Drivers are supposed to say, hey, that's, something's wrong with that, send it in to get fixed. But at the end of the day, they need to do 2 or 3 turns in a day, or they're not going to make enough money. And especially for the owner operators, who they still got to pay for their trucks and pay for the equipment, they need to move. And shouldn't the people that own the equipment be the ones responsible for maintaining it? But at the end of the day, if our driver takes that on the road and gets pulled over, those CSA points go to the driver and they go to us as the motor carrier. If they blow a tire or just something just breaks while they're in transit without them hitting something, that bill comes back to us, which typically goes back to the driver. And just at the end of the day, one of our terminal owners here in Pittsburgh has a good analogy, is like, it's like a rental car. So if you would go to get a rental car and just general wear and tear, the thing broke, you'd be pissed at the rental car company and they would make it right. But in the drayage world, we'll rent that chassis for today after several other people have rented it, and there's just general wear and tear that shouldn't go back to who has the hot potato at the very end. Right. But that's the way it works. And don't even get me into when you're getting into drop and hook situations, because if it gets outgated on the container with the chassis under our SCAC and gets dropped at a facility, and then 3 weeks later another carrier brings it back, well, something could happen within that, but it falls back on the carrier that outgated it that's going to get that bill. And how does
it's an interesting thing. I think the piece I would like to highlight with that is it creates incentives for things to be less safe. Because if you're a drayage provider and you have a piece of equipment that is maybe not safe, or is normal wear and tear happening, your incentive is almost not to report it. Just I'll get it back there and hopefully it'll be fine.
Yep.
I remember when I used to do work on the rail yards in CSX here in Bedford Park, Illinois. You'd see drayage operators with bags of lights that they would just have available, because if they grabbed a chassis that wasn't well maintained, they'd stick a new light on there and they'd get going. And it's not what we want as an industry when it comes to safety. So I'm with you there. I think
because visual defects are the ones you really got. You don't want to make sure that a light's not out, because that'll get you pulled over.
Yeah, that's right.
So you try to get the easy stuff, but the bigger stuff that could cause a safety hazard, that's just roll of the dice.
Yeah, I tell those people all the time, the national out of service rate for commercial vehicles right now is at about 22%. So that means 1 in 5 vehicles that are on the road right now moving something, if you looked at them, would not be safe on the minimum FMCSA threshold. So even in a perfect world, in which we don't have a perfect world, we have a lot of stuff to be improved upon. So as we gear up to wrap up this conversation, Jordan, where can people find more about you? Where can more people find out information about ARL Network, and what events are you going to be at besides IANA, obviously?
Yeah, I'm a pretty open book. You find me on LinkedIn at any time. Obviously, ARLnetwork.com will give you a good rundown of where our terminals are at and more into our core values. Yeah, and we'll be at IANA. We're going to be at JOC Inland, which I think you're speaking.
I will be there too. The red corduroy jacket.
Of me real quick. We got our sales team is going out to RE Plus, which is next week as well, which is more of the renewable energy stuff, which we'll see where that industry necessarily goes, but it still seems to be shipping freight. We got a few things. Oh, Soft Task is another one. That's a charity tournament down in Dallas. We'll be promoting that. A lot of intermodal players there as well. Raises a lot of money for charity. It's been going on for a couple of decades now. So some good people there as well.
Well, I will make sure to put some links in the show notes to your LinkedIn page, and also toss things on the ARL Network. If someone's looking to kind of become an agent for you, whether on the drayage side or the brokerage side, is the best place the website, or where would you recommend people go to learn more about that?
No, you can definitely go to the website. We have information out there for the agents to see kind of what we offer. People can reach out to me directly as well. And Ron's the same way. You can find Ron Faraday on there. It's president of the company. He's the most accessible guy that you've ever met. He'll take your call on a Sunday if he has to. It's just a way of life for him. So he's also doing 7 Mondays a week. So, but we have a whole team that does that as well. Our agent support team's amazing. Some of those guys all came from the trenches themselves, so the agents love them because they're out there fighting their fight for them. So typically that's a team that runs it from the beginning.
Well, Jordan, I appreciate you for coming on today. I'm going to kick you out, say a quick outro. Stick around if you can.
You got
But
it.
thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks. This is great. Appreciate it.
Jordan Rebar, what a guy. I got to tell you, when I first met him at DAT's Executive Symposium, I knew this was somebody who had a passion for helping people excel. Natural leader who has the ability to understand where to go from good to great. I am so excited you had a chance to join us, even though it's not a Monday and Tuesday. It's the furthest day from next Monday, but Monday will be here soon enough. I can't thank you enough for jumping in, tuning in. We'll see you at IANA. We'll see you at the Inland Distribution Conference for the Journal of Commerce, S&P. And of course, thanks to our sponsors, the advertisers who help all of this happen. My buddies at Genlogs, cameras everywhere, a new standard of care for freight intelligence. And of course, our good friends at DAT, Dial Truck 1978, helping people discover more loads, building the trusted marketplace. Convoy, Trucker Tools, Outgo. Oh, Mr. Adamo is very busy. He's very, very busy. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you again at some later date. Maybe we'll do a spontaneous little podcasty thing on IEFA. It never seems to be going away. We'll see you next time. Thank you and good luck.